She became the first female self-made billionaire. But what steps and measures did she take to get here? How many people did she harm? How many people are still harmed today? She became one of the wealthiest drug lords and one of the most reputed names in the drug trafficking game in the 1970s and 1980s. Known as the Godmother for her mob-like mentality, she was feared. Nobody, male or female, dared to cross her. So what lengths would she go to become the first woman self-made billionaire? Join me as I examine the case of the most wealthiest female drug lord ever, Griselda Blanco, on this episode of True Crime and Authors.
Welcome to True Crime and Authors Podcast, where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction. Here's your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of True Crime and Authors. Of course, I am your man, David McClam. Hey, if you haven't done so already, please follow us on all our social media outlets. One link to a link tree in the show notes gets every link to the show that you need. All right, guys, so as you know, today is True Crime Day. I always say if you guys have a case that you would like to hear me do, drop me a line. Well, today is going to prove that that actually works. So today's case, I actually sent out a text to two people, my wife being one of the two, asking what of the three cases I should do. And I got an overwhelming response for this one. So this one goes out to my wife, Beth, and to Scott Collard, a coworker of mine. Today's case is on Griselda Blanco. If you do not know about Griselda Blanco, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. As usual, I do have a Wikipedia page pulled up, but I'm going to fill in all the gaps for you from research that I have done, because the Wikipedia page on Griselda Blanco is very dire compared to what this woman has done. All right, so let's jump in. Who exactly was Griselda Blanco? She was known as the Black Widow, also as La Madrina, which means in Spanish, Godmother. She was a Colombian drug lord of the Medellin cartel and in the Miami-based cocaine drug trade in the underworld there during the 1980s to the early 2000s. Her whole legal name is Griselda Blanco Restrepo. She was born February 15, 1943 in Cartagena, which is on the country's north coast. She and her mother, Ana Blanco, moved to Medellin when she was 3 years old. Upon arriving there, she adopted a criminal lifestyle. Griselda's former lover, Charles Cosby, recounted that at the age of 11, she allegedly kidnapped, attempted to ransom, and eventually shot a child from an upscale flatland neighborhood near her own neighborhood. Griselda Blanco had become a pickpocket before she even turned 13, and to escape the sexual assaults of her mother's boyfriend, she ran away from home at the age of 19 and resorted to looting in Medellin until she was the age of 20. Now let's break some of that down because that's very vague. It is true that she started her criminal career at the age of 11. She did kidnap a young man her same age and did contact his parents for ransom. It makes it sound like she just jumped up and shot him, but no, she actually, like a real ransom, she gave him time to get the money and told her where to drop the money at, and they did not take Griselda seriously. So after some time of pretty much figuring out that, hey, they ain't going to reply or respond to my demands, she did end up shooting this 11-year-old, and that is, of course, according to Charles Cosby. Now, for some things that I have read, I guess some people has figured out that this is true, but she did start her criminal life very, very early. Now, Griselda was born in Medellin, in the very poorest parts of Medellin. She did suffer a lot of trauma growing up, abuse physically, mentally. Also, as you heard, she escaped sexual assaults of her mom's own boyfriend. So this further kind of led her down that path. So where does she go? How does she get into all of these things? So I'm going to read to you a little bit how her drug business started, and then I'm going to fill in all of the holes that is here so you can better understand exactly how this transpired. So it goes on to say Griselda was a figure in the drug trade from Colombia to Miami, New York, and California. In the mid-1970s, she illegally immigrated to the United States with false passports and settled in Queens, New York. She established a sizable cocaine business there, and in April 1975, she was indicted on federal drug conspiracy charges, along with 30 of her subordinates. She fled to Colombia before she could be arrested, but returned to the United States and settled in Miami in the late 1980s. Let's break that down for you because there's a lot of information you need to know. Back when she was 13, which was in 1957, she gets herself a boyfriend. The boyfriend's name is Carlos Trujillo. He was a Colombian people trafficker. So over the next 5 years, she has a relationship with Carlos, and he teaches her all of the deep, dark, and dirty secrets of passport forgery. She becomes an expert at it, which is how she starts writing her own passports to get in and out of places that she needs to get. By the time she turns 19, though, she marries Carlos Trujillo. They have 3 sons. Those 3 sons are Dixon, Uber, and Osvaldo. So just wanted to clear that up. It made it sound like that she just jumped in and she became this queen pin. No, she was taught by her then boyfriend how to make these passports. So when she started getting indicted on these crimes, she started taking off because now she was a master at making fake IDs, fake passports. Wherever she needed to get in and get out of, she could do that. Now, in the mid-70s, she illegally immigrated to the United States with false passports and settled in Queens, New York. She established a sizable cocaine business there, and in April of 1975, she was indicted on federal drug conspiracy charges along with 30 of her subordinates. How did she get there, though? So, yes, in 1970, she illegally immigrated to the United States by way of these passports that she's able to forge thanks to the teachings of Carlos Trujillo. But also in 1970, Carlos died suddenly and very suspiciously of liver failure. Nobody saw it coming. I guess his liver just failed. Boom, he dies. So nobody can prove this one, but it has been rumored for many years that she has something to do with Carlos's death because she wanted to take over and she wanted to be the queen pin of this business. So what happens after that is kind of cold because according to the Wikipedia, it just keeps going on to say that in 1975, she was indicted, but she had to get there first. So at age 27, before Carlos was cold in his grave, she already had a new man to replace him. This was gangster Alberto Bravo. Now, Alberto Bravo is a cocaine smuggler. She starts to see all the money that can be made through this business, but she says, hey, this has got to be done in the United States. We can't do this here. Now, he was very small time, but she wanted to be the biggest cocaine empire in the world. So she convinces him, we got to go to the U.S. They go to the U.S., their crime wave begins. Now, if you're figuring this out, her boyfriend at 13, Carlos Trujillo, who later becomes her husband and the father of 3 of her kids, teaches her a very valuable lesson of how to create good forgeries. He dies in 1970. She then hooks up with gangster Alberto Bravo, who is a cocaine smuggler. He teaches her the cocaine trade, and she now starts to see how to make this money. So now she has 2 dudes that's taught her everything she needs to know, and now it's time for her to run with that. So in 1973, She moves her whole headquarters to New York from Medellin. She already had a network of Colombian dealers there already that was operating. So her network was already built. Her distribution network also was already in place so she could start building the big cocaine empire. The only thing she needs to do now is figure out how to import all this stuff in mass quantities. So the only way in which she can figure out how to do this is, well, we got to get people that can go through and become undetected. So she did that. She started making undergarments, bras, panties for ladies, in which that she can put cocaine in and it wouldn't cause any suspicion. They would appear to be smooth around the body. They would appear just to fit like a regular bra. And then she was smart enough to get women that was very well endowed at the top. Nobody's going to say, well, let me search you because you can't do that. So these bras were very well made. They were stuffing cocaine in those. They were stuffing cocaines and pockets that she had built in the underwear. They even had shoes that had heels that twisted to the side where you can stuff packets of cocaine in there. This is how she got her stuff out over the air. So these ladies were trained on how to use their sexual charms to flirt with all of these DEA agents that may be at the airport, and they're on their way. Now, once the cocaine hits New York, it is distributed in a matter of hours. This now causes suspicion, and an investigation begins into who this is. So this is the part that they was leaving out that I'm explaining to you now. So this is all during New York City. The Wikipedia jumped you right to Miami, which we will definitely get into that in a minute because that becomes a very important part of her drug reign and what did take place in the 80s. Basically, what ends up happening is they need to find out who this is. They've never been able to track down exactly who it is. They didn't know, if it was a man or female. Back then, they would assume that it was a male because the males was the one that was doing all of this drug running and being successful drug pins. And they start asking around. One name continuously came up all the time, though, which was basically Griselda Blanco. However, they don't have no photo. There's no way to trace her. So they tracked down these two sisters called the Caban sisters. It turns out that they were also into the drug reign, and maybe at some point they had did business with Griselda Blanco. So they go to the Caban sisters and says, hey, can we get you some names? If you do, we'll make you this deal. So whatever deal they made, the Caban sisters like, yeah, man, we can think about that. So they told them we'll put you in witness protection and we'll go ahead and get you out of jail. Now we don't know how much time the Caban sisters was facing. Nothing has ever said that, but whatever it was a deal that they could not refuse. And they say, all right, we'll give you what you need. And they give up 37 names, including once again, Griselda Blanco. And she's now untraceable because now that she knows all of these things to get in and out of countries with passports, they can't find out where she is. She's wearing disguises. She's going through with many different names. So you can't catch somebody you can't track. So thanks to Carlos Trujillo and teaching how to do these fake passports, they can't put a finger on it. Every time she travels, folks, every time she has a different fake identity, and they are done so well, no one's questioning those. So what ended up happening was during this time, I guess Griselda's got this sixth sense saying something's going on. She has snuck her way all the way back into Colombia. So now the investigators is looking for her here in the States. She's no longer here. She's now escaped to Colombia. Well, what happens in Colombia? Well, escaping the DEA, that was one problem. Now she's escaped that, but she has a whole nother problem. His name is Pablo Escobar. If you know anything about Pablo Escobar, he is the king of cocaine. He was the richest drug trafficker out there in the world, and by all accounts, the most dangerous. Well, everybody else was afraid of Griselda Blanco. Griselda Blanco could be evil, she could be murderous, she could be downright vicious if she needed to be, and nobody wanted to cross her. But Pablo Escobar said, bring it on, I ain't scared. Well, now they want to fight over territory. They were going to war for this drug territory, and at one point, they literally tried to kill each other. So what happens is she knows that Pablo Escobar is like on her trail. We got to send a message to Pablo. You don't mess with the Godmother. We're going to try and see what we can do to take him out. So she develops, no matter who tells you otherwise, the truth is today, Griselda Blanco is the one that developed the way of killing somebody by way of motorcycle drive-by. That was her whole thing. If you drive on a motorcycle, shoot somebody, keep going, nobody can see you. She invented that. She had some of Pablo Escobar's men laid down up underneath that whole entire thing. Pablo, meanwhile, responds with, I'm still going to try to take over Colombia. So he walks in, he kills several police officers, and he bribes officials, and he secures the Medellin airport. Now, what that does is it totally cripples Griselda's main distribution route to the U.S. So now she's in a big bind. She can't have anything flown in from Medellin out because of the fact that Pablo Escobar now owns that. So what do? So she goes on the run again. She can't come back to New York because the DEA is there and looking for her. She is now muscled completely out of Colombia. So she vanishes once again, and this time she disappears for 3 years. Now, in the middle of all of that, what's going on with her and Alberto? So as we already know, Carlos died of liver failure. And then, as we established, she went and picked up our boy, Alberto Bravo. Well, her and Alberto was together for 6 years until one day, she believed that he was skimming profits off the top of the business, and on top of that, he was having an affair. So she kills him, and that is what gives her the name the Black Widow. She is now the head of the entire cocaine empire now. No one else is in her way. No one else is in line of succession. By taking him out, she owns everything. If you look up anything about Griselda, the first thing they will run into is they will call her the Black Widow just because of that. And everybody became, if they were already not scared, they became scared. If they were scared, they was more scared because now she took out her own husband. So what happens? She disappears for 3 years. Well, she resurfaces. Says her return more or less coincided with the beginning of very public violent conflicts that involved hundreds of murders and killings yearly, which was associated with the high crime epidemic that swept the city of Miami in the 1980s. The struggle by law enforcement to put an end to the influx of cocaine in Miami led to the creation of Syntac 26, which stands for Central Tactical Unit, a joint operation between the Miami-Dade Police Department and the Drug Enforcement Administration anti-drug operation. Blanco was involved in the drug-related violence known as the Miami Drug War or the Cocaine Cowboy Wars that plagued Miami in the late 1970s and early 1980s. This was a time when cocaine was trafficked more than cannabis. The distribution network, which spanned the United States, earned $80 million per month. Let's backtrack just a little bit. Now we're in Miami. That's where it happened. She left Colombia, disappeared for 3 years, but she was in Miami this whole time. So in 1976, things started to happen in Miami because crime started to pick up, as I just read to you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Cocaine Cowboys, which Griselda was the biggest part of. All these murders now starts taking place. 1979 becomes the worst year of that because Cocaine Cowboys is rolling in and they taking out all their rivals. And the first thing the FBI says is, this looks like a Black Widow killing. The way they was killed, the way they was shot, motorcycle drive-bys, the brutality of it, they're like, this has got Griselda Blanco's name all over it. Now her distribution even grows because not only is she getting her cocaine delivered by air, but she's also getting it delivered by sea, because the cocaine cowboys, once they came together, they had ways of having cocaine come in on boats. Just boats as huge, false floors, whatever it took. They would come in at night so they could not be detected with just boatloads of cocaine. And that's how she got it in. So this is why she's making that $80 million a month, because the cocaine keeps coming. So then one day they're like, we think it's her. And in 1982, there was a family named the Lorenzos who was murdered. That was a murder that was ordered by Griselda Blanco, because they were a family that was standing in her way of making her money. And there was nobody ever going to come against her making money. In her lifetime, she orders over 200 attacks of revenge, and 3,400 pounds a month of cocaine was coming in, which gave her that 80 mil a month. Now, in 1984, Blanco's willingness to use violence towards anyone who displeased her led her rivals to make repeated attempts to assassinate her. In an attempt to escape the hits that were called on her, she fled to California. Drug barons in Colombia allowed her access to killers. Then she would be given orders to tell the killers to murder a particular rival. She calmly told them that everyone in a dwelling where the target was located should be killed. At times, she demanded that any living entity, cats, dogs, goldfish, etc., were also to be killed. Thus, several innocent people, even children, were killed along the cartel's intended victim. These extra murders caused Miami to become the murder capital of the America for years. If you guys go watch the documentary Cocaine Cowboys, I can't pinpoint his name right now, but you will see this story. When it says that she told people, anyone where the target is, including children, well, there was a guy that needed to be killed. She sent her murderers after him. They was going to do a drive-by on him because he was actually driving around in his car. When they spotted him, it was him in the car, but in the back seat was also, I believe, his son. So they go back and they tell, they call Griselda up and she's like, is it done? And he's like, no, we can't shoot him because he's got his kid with her. And her exact order was, well, you got to kill him too. Kill everybody in the car. And this actually made her happy. And that's exactly what happened. When they went back to assassinate him, they tracked him back down again. They took him out and his son. She had no feeling about that at all. None. And when they reported to her that it was done, she actually asked, did you kill the kid too? And when their response was, yeah, she was very happy about that. Here at True Crime and Authors, I read a lot of books. Every author that you've heard me interview and everyone that you will hear me interview, I've either read one of their books or I'm in the process of reading one. So how do I keep up with all of the books that I read? Well, that is where the show's sponsor, Catch Creations 614, comes into play. Catch Creations makes digital handmade planners and journals, and for those who want something on paper, printables as well. She can make anything from My Little Pony to Black Panther, anything that you can creatively think of, Catch Creations 614 can get it done. With excellent customer service and excellent communication, the owner, Kristen, will make sure that your journal comes out right and perfect the first time. And for those who are listeners of this show, you will get a special 10% discount when you use the code TrueCrime10. Catch Creations, best handmade planners, journals, and printables in the business. Check it out now. So as you heard, she had a lot of people to kill for her because the Colombians was allowing her access to killers. So people was just getting killed, dropping off the face of the earth. So now they got to try to set up a sting to see if they can actually get to Griselda Blanco. They knew that the only way that they may be able to is if they can get somebody to infiltrate them or somebody that was close enough to maybe get in. So they discovered that her sons, Osvaldo Blanco, Uber Blanco and Dixon Trujillo are running her 3 legs of the business, which is in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Miami. They've now spent over 10 years hunting for Griselda Blanco. So here's the plan they came up with. There was a guy who was locked up in jail. His name is Jerry Gomez. Jerry Gomez knew Griselda's sons because he had sold them motorcycles before. Now, he was doing a 10-year sentence in jail. So they went to him like, hey, Jerry, if you know Griselda's son, here's the deal we gonna make you. You doing 10 years right now. We'll put you in witness protection and we'll let you out of jail. You can walk out of here free if you help us with this. So Jerry said, yeah, they released him from prison and they sent him undercover. But this guy was kind of a wreck. So Jerry does go, he meets Dixon. He does not know it's a setup. Dixon does not. He just thinks it's a normal guy looking for drugs. So Dixon starts offering information that Griselda is between Los Angeles and Miami. And it worked. So 3 weeks later, Jerry actually gets a call from Griselda herself. Now, the reason why she's in between LA and Miami is you have to understand that at this point in time, Griselda has made a ton of enemies everywhere. She's killed people over here. She's killed people in Colombia. She's done things to make sure her empire was going to be what it was. She's top of the heat. She has a ton of enemies. So she moved back to Los Angeles, California, because she felt that that was the safest place for her to be. So now the FBI is happy because, Jerry reports, hey, Griselda called me herself and she wants me to meet her in one of the hotel rooms in Los Angeles. They're like, great, so let's get this hooked up. So that's what happens. They need her to incriminate herself on tape so they can arrest her. Now, Griselda's right there. They drop Jerry off at the hotel. She's right inside this building, and the FBI has to resist the urge to go in and arrest her. They're thinking, man, we've been hunting for 10 years. She's right inside this building. But they knew if they couldn't get something from her, that it wouldn't stick. So Jerry goes in, guys. He's a complete wreck. I'm surprised that he didn't get shot. He's sweating profusely everywhere. He's stuttering. The FBI can't make out anything that he's saying on the tape that they're recording. And he's just a mess. Griselda, of course, being who she is, pretty much smelled something wasn't right with him and pretty much had him leave and then said that they wasn't going to do any more business with him. Again, I'm surprised that they didn't kill him right there on the spot. So then in 1985, it all starts to come down to an end. So on February 17th of 1985, Griselda Blanco was arrested in her home by the Drug Enforcement Administration, and she was charged with conspiring to manufacture, import, and distribute cocaine. The case went to trial in federal court in New York City, where she was found guilty, and she was then sentenced to 15 years. So basically, they snuck up on her. They had got a tip that her hideout was in Irvine, California, and they was given the address. So they rolled up and they verified that it is indeed Griselda in the house. So after they took binoculars and from the car was able to see her walking around, they called in reinforcements and they got into her house and she was not suspecting anything. There was no booby traps in the house. There was no bodyguards. The only weapon that she had was across the room, so she couldn't even reach that. She was in her chair in her bathrobe reading a book. When she looked up, she had about 7 guns pointed at her. They took her with no incident, but of course, in Griselda fashion, she's just not going to go without saying anything. So of course, she started cussing them out, and the lead detective walks up and kisses her on the cheek. And she demands to know, why did you kiss me on the cheek? And he said, because we're so happy to see you finally. Now, within a few months from that, all 3 of her sons also gets captured and they're taken to jail. So she gets 15 years for that. But while she's serving her sentence, she was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder by the state of Florida. The prosecution made a deal with one of Blanco's most trusted hitmen, Jorge Ayala, who agreed to testify against her. However, the case collapsed due to technicalities relating to a phone sex scandal between Ayala and two female securities who worked in the state attorney's office. So basically, Blanco pleaded guilty in 1998 and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. And in 2002, Griselda suffered a heart attack in prison. Now, they say they're kind of timid about this whole phone sex scandal. From all reports that I have read, basically what ended up happening is it wasn't securities that I read. It was somebody directly on the prosecution team that he got caught up with this phone sex scandal. Well, now the prosecution's case is baked because the fact that since somebody from their own team is having a sexual relationship, no matter what kind of it that it is, with the lead witness that's supposed to prosecute her, they have to go now and make Griselda the best deal they can to make sure that she serves time. So in the end, she ended up serving 13 of her 15-year sentence. She goes to trial in 1994. They make her a deal. So on that deal, she avoided death row. And now with her time served with that 13 years, with the deal that they made, they would only add 7 years to her sentence. So in 2004, she was released and she was deported back to Medellin, Colombia, where she again disappeared. Now understand, guys, probably some of her biggest enemies is in Medellin. When people come over here and they're fleeing something like that, the one thing they'll tell you is, I can't go back to where I came from because it's a for sure death sentence if I go back. But if you know anything about American law, once you come over here and you're not from this country and you do something heinous and you get convicted and you go to jail, if you ever get out of prison again, once your time is served, America will pay for you a first class one-way ticket back to your country, and you are barred from ever coming back to the United States again. And that's what happened to her. But to her credit, she disappears for 5 years. If you look up anything on Griselda Blanco, after her release date of 2004, the number one question is, where is Griselda Blanco? Where did Griselda Blanco go? What's going on with her? Does anybody know? Nobody knew. Now, I have a feeling that one person did know, which we're going to talk about him in a minute, because they said nothing about him through this whole entire thing, and he's very important to the case. But of course, he's not going to rat her out. Basically, what ends up happening is she disappears for 5 years. Nobody's seen her. And then one day, on September the 3rd, 2012, Griselda decided she needed some meat. So she went to Cardizo Butcher Shop, which is on the corner of 29th Street in Medellin, and she bought $150 worth of meat. While she was there, by the same method that she had used to kill so many people, a motorcycle drive-by happened. She was shot and killed at age 69. She was shot once in the head and once in the shoulder. And then the motorcycle left. Now, the way that it said it happened is that basically it wasn't necessarily a drive-by, but he appeared on a bike that supposedly the motorcyclist got out, entered into the shop, and shot her cold there, and then left. Now, before she was murdered, the last time she was seen was in May 2007 at Bogota Airport. So, I guess when it comes down to the one thing the Bible says, everybody likes to use this verse, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. That is exactly what happened to Griselda. She died by the own method in which she created. Now, I told you that there was one other person in this equation that it did not mention, and that is her third and youngest son. His name is Michael Corleone Blanco. If you're getting that name, yes, he was named after Michael Corleone from The Godfather. Now, she had him with her third husband, Dario Sepulveda. Now, what happened to him? This adds on to her Black Widow moniker. Dario left her in 1983, he returned to Colombia and he kidnapped Michael. And when he and Griselda disagreed over who would have custody, Griselda paid to have Sepulveda assassinated in Colombia, and her son returned to her in Miami. Let's talk about Michael Blanco for a minute. My heart goes out to him. This was his mother. If you know nothing about him at all, like I said, he is the youngest son and the last son of Griselda Blanco. While he was a kid, his mom was doing all this stuff. This one young man has buried 22 members of his family. On top of that, he's also escaped 7 assassination attempts on his own. So what they actually wrote up about him, the little bit they did, states that according to the Miami News Times, Michael's father and older siblings were all killed before he reached adulthood. His mother was in prison for most of his childhood and teenage years, and he was raised by his maternal grandmother and legal guardians. In 2012, Michael was put under house arrest for an arrest in May on 2 felony counts of cocaine trafficking and conspiracy to traffic in cocaine. If you're paying attention, his mother died in 2012. What do you think happened? Do you think the business just went away? No. With Michael being the last known survivor of Griselda Blanco, the business was passed down to him. He decides that he's going to try to run this business, but he soon decides he's going to get out of that. Now, in between all this time, Michael has done several appearances. He did appear in a 2018 episode of the Investigation Discovery documentary, Evil Lives Here. He did recount his childhood being very lonely. And then there was a whole documentary series made in 2019 called Cartel Crew. Now, that whole entire show is nothing but descendants of drug lords. And there was one girl that I followed because I watched the show Ink Master. Her name was Tattoo Baby. When I turned it on and seen her there, didn't know her. You know, her dad was a big drug pen and got caught up in some stuff too. But that's what happened. So he decided that it was best for him to try to go legitimate. He didn't want to do anything with the drug cartel anymore. He kind of wanted to put that behind and live life free. Now, according to him, his mother did become a born-again Christian before she died. Let me tell you where I kind of sit with Michael Blanco. And the statements I'm going to make, I mean with the utmost respect, and I hope that if he ever hears this, he can understand exactly where I'm coming from. Now, Michael is very close to his mom. There was an episode of Cartel Crew where I can't remember exactly what was going on. It's been so long since I've seen it, but there was something going on in Colombia. And the whole crew decided that they were going to go to Colombia and help the protest, whatever was going on over there. Now, if you've listened to anything I've said about his mother, the way these cartels and stuff works is if one person dies and they don't like you, you're the next because you took over the business, so we're going to come after you. So with tears in his eyes, Michael says, you guys know I can't go back to Colombia. And it's true. Michael Blanco can never step foot in Colombia again. Even though he has done nothing to no one, he didn't kill anybody. Yes, he went to jail for drug trafficking. His mother did. And now he carries the sin of the mom. So if he ever stepped foot back in Colombia, the minute he gets off a plane, somebody's going to be notifying folks, hey, Michael Blanco's back in town. They're going to organize, and he probably won't make it out. So you see him tell Tattoo Baby, hey, man, you guys know I can't go back. But would you do me a favor and would you go to my mother's grave for me and pay my respects? And he gave her a bunch of stuff to take to the grave for him. Now, in that moment, I did feel for him because it's sad that you can't even go and visit your own mom's grave and she's buried over there. Right. So he can never go and attend to it. But somebody was, because of the fact that the grave that was there, I just don't believe is fitting for somebody of the crimes that she committed. It's a very well manicured grave. There's a cross on it. It's like a very nice manicured grass that her headstone's in. I mean, this is just my opinions. I don't believe that that headstone is worthy, or that that grave is worthy of somebody who did the crimes that she committed. When Tattoo Baby went there, somebody had came in and laid very fresh white flowers all over the grave, very pretty white flowers all over the grave. And she, you know, as he asked, paid respects to her, left her the pictures and stuff of that nature. Then she called him and said, hey, I'm at your mother's grave right now, and I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes alone. And he did break down and said that, you know, they killed a 70-year-old woman and they couldn't take her out in her prime. And, you know, he was like, that's my mom, and I'm always love my mom. I totally get that. Nobody loves their mom more than I do. I don't believe it's because they couldn't take her on her prime. Well, they couldn't find her. She was a master of disguise. She was a master of getting away from people. Tattoo Baby goes on to say, no matter what she did, you know, Griselda was not, you know, the world's best person, but that is still his mama. And I get that. But the next thing that he did to go legitimate, I'm 100% against. So he decides that he's not going to do the cocaine. He tells his now wife, we're not going to do that business. We're going to try to uplift this in a different way, where we're just not going to do drugs anymore. I've got to find a way to go legitimate that's going to help make money. So on that show is where he gave the idea in the birth of his own clothing line called Pure Blanco. So as you watch the show, you get the notion that it's not everything you're thinking it's going to be. So I'm thinking, okay, Pure Blanco clothing line. His name is Michael Blanco. You know, maybe he has some cool stuff. But to me, it became a site to glorify what Griselda Blanco has done. Let me tell you why that is. If you go to the Pure Blanco site, the first thing that happens is when you turn, or when you go to the page, Black Widows runs across the page. That's the first. The logo of Pure Blanco that goes up in the middle, at least on their website, between the U and the R, is a Black Widow. Now, on the clothing itself, there is no Black Widow there, but you get the picture. It also says that Pure Blanco was established in 1943. Griselda Blanco was born February 15th, 1943. One of the best selling items on this website is items that has Griselda Blanco's face on it. There is a sweatshirt that is there that has a picture of her straight up. And the things that they named these things is Black Widow gang members only tee, cartel members only tee. You get the gist. There's even a Griselda Blanco classic tee. So I really wanted to look at this more of, okay, they're not really trying to glorify anything. Maybe this is a way of keeping his mom's memory alive. But then when you scroll a little bit down on the website, it tells you who Griselda Blanco is. In the short episode, it says the cocaine godmother, Griselda Blanco, became the first woman self-made billionaire and one of the world's wealthiest drug lords. According to reports, she smuggled more than 3 tons of cocaine annually, netting $80 million per month. They're telling you exactly that this line is glorifying the things and the works of Griselda Blanco. As a matter of fact, to further prove that point, if you go to the About Us, here's what that short excerpt About Us says. It says, Pure Blanco is a billionaire cartel lifestyle brand created by Michael Corleone Blanco and his longtime friend, Michael Magic Ewan. Michael Corleone is the proud son of Griselda Blanco, the cocaine godmother. The two entrepreneurs are building an empire which focuses on fashion, film, music, cannabis, and licensing of the Pure Blanco brand. We are a lifestyle brand made by bosses for bosses, so wear with pride. And he has a quote from his mother that says, weak is dangerous, Griselda Blanco. The problem I have with this is they're glorifying a murderer. They're not saying in terms that we would, this is bad. They're making it sound like this is something that was good, right? I mean, on the website that pumps her up ass, she's one of the first female self-made billionaires. I can't do it. No disrespect to Michael, I can't do it. I don't wear Godfather t-shirts. I don't wear Al Capone t-shirts. I can't do it because to me, I'm giving money into a cause that's glorifying someone who took somebody else's life. I mean, they even have a t-shirt that says boss like Griselda with a picture of her down there. It's a woman's tee. What message is that sending? Boss like Griselda, go out and sell some drugs, go out and kill people? Hey, man, again, I know it's his mom, but let's face the facts. Griselda Blanco was a murderer. She was a drug lord. She ordered over 200 murders of people. She killed at least 2 of her husbands. And the sad thing is Michael Blanco won't even admit that. He's been asked in several interviews I've seen, did you really think your mom has killed your dad? And his answer comes back to, no, I don't really believe that. I think that there was a hit put on him because he did this. No, unfortunately, she killed both of them. And there's a lot of historians that don't dispute that. There's a lot of people that was close to Griselda Blanco that states, yeah, she took him out. Because once you cross her, that's it. If you guys decide to support Pierre Blanco, that is a decision that you guys get to make. But I just don't feel like I can wear a shirt that portrays a murderer on it. And after I know what she's done, and not to mention the hundreds, if not thousands of lives over the years that's died just off of the cocaine that she was trafficking. I know some of you within the sound of my voice wasn't around in the 1980s, but I'm telling you, go watch Cocaine Cowboys. The cocaine drug trade, dude, was booming. It was the biggest selling drug going. Told you, it even brought in more stuff than cannabis, AKA weed. People was making mad money. And at the same time, killing the people that they were giving the stuff to. That's just my thought. You do have to feel for Michael Blanco, though. Like I said, his whole family, dude, was dead before he was grown. He didn't have his brothers to lean on because they were gone. They were part of the drug trade with their mom. You know, when mom gets out of prison, she has to go in hiding. And he's the one person that I was mentioning to that I believe he knew where she was. But he couldn't go see his mom. No matter what evil Griselda Blanco did, every child deserves to see their mom before their mom goes. And because of the heinous crimes that she committed, because of the enemies that she made, it caused America to jail her and deport her back to Colombia, someplace where Michael can't go. And I'm sure he talked to her many times over the 5 years that she was there. I'm sure she said, son, I know you want to see me, but you can't come here. They'll take you out. On that notion, I do feel bad for him. If you ever watch any interviews with Michael, he is a very down-to-earth gentleman. I do believe that he's a nice guy. I don't believe that he has any malice in his heart. He says that he is a Christian that walks with the Lord. I can't tell you if that's true or not. I'm not the judgment of that. If he says it's what it is, you have to take his word for it. He's gotten himself out of the drug game. We have to give him that. Okay, he had it all set up for himself right there to keep making those millions. But he got out for his family, for himself, for his children. But I just cannot stand behind the Pierre Blanco line because of who is glorifying what it is. I just can't do that. I mean, there's even a sweatshirt where it has NWA, Narcos with Attitude, and it has the 3 biggest narco dealers on the planet. And of course, Griselda is right in the middle of that. So again, if you guys want to go check out the Pierre Blanco site, by all means, go ahead and do that. You'll see what we're talking about. But again, no disrespect to Michael, but it's just something I could not support because I would feel like that I am supporting the cause and keeping her legacy alive as a drug dealer and a murderer. Make no mistake, guys. Yeah, she was an entrepreneur. She was the first female billionaire, but the way in which she went about it was wrong, and it did cost people their lives. So that does it for the case of Griselda Blanco. I hope you guys got a lot out of that and learned something that you did not know before. All right, everyone. I thank you for tuning in and joining me on this one this week. I hope you guys are really enjoying True Crime and Authors. I put blood, sweat, and tears in this every week, trying to give you guys some compelling cases as well as authors that's going to intrigue the mind. If you guys checked out LaDonna Humphrey, who I dropped last week, be sure you do go check out her new book, Strangled. It comes out October 28th. I'll remind you guys every episode that I have between now and then so that you guys go check that out. She is doing God's work over there. This community needs to be shut down, and hopefully she's able to find the killer of Melissa Witt. So next week, you know it's Author Week. I got a good one for you. For all you sports fans out there that want to know what it's like to be in the trenches, what it's like to go from a high school to college season to go into the pros, what it's like to be able to give somebody that advice. On top of that, you spend the last 20 years of your life in the music business and you're very successful CEO going forward with that. You want to turn in next week when I'll talk to author Eugene Napoleon. The information he's going to give there is for everyone. You don't want to miss this interview. I guarantee you're going to learn something from it. All right, as always, I thank you guys for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are staying safe out there, and always remember, always stay humble. A little love and compassion goes a long way. And this is the podcast where two passions becomes one. I'll catch you guys the next time.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Authors. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. On Facebook at True Crime and Authors. On Twitter at Authors True. On YouTube and TikTok at True Crime and Authors. And email at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Dazzling_Ray from Fiverr. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild from Fiverr. And I'm the voice guy, your imaging guy from Fiverr. See you next time on True Crime and Authors.